I'm going to bring in Congressman Morgan Griffith from the Ninth District. Congressman, you're on with John and Professor Phill Kline, Liberty University. Congressman, great to have you with us.
Great to be with you, and always good to hear the professor.
So I was at the Oval Office yesterday when President Trump signed the bill you guys passed to reopen the government. Senator Haggerty was there. He was very proud of the fact that they cut $10 million out of the IRS bureaucracy. He was very upset that they had leaked enemies, tax returns, Trump's included. So he's very proud of that. But now we got 13 days or so to get the DHS funding. Big battle going on there. Schumer wants warrants. Lindsey Graham told him to pound sand. What do you see there, Congressman Morgan Griffith?
Well, it's really kind of frustrating, and the Democrats have painted themselves into a corner, in my opinion, because the people who actually get hurt are organizations like the Coast Guard. Because of the reconciliation bill, there's plenty of money for ICE. They want to go after ICE money, but a continuing resolution, ICE still has plenty of money. It's the Coast Guard and some of the other agencies that are under Department of Homeland Security that get hurt. And so I don't know what the Democrats are going to do on this. There's some things that, look, I'm a liberty-loving guy. I'm glad they're finally doing body cams for the ICE officers, starting in Minnesota and then moving on, because I'm a big believer in body cams. If you're not guilty, they help prove you're not guilty. If you're guilty, they help prove you're guilty. And you don't have to be he said, she said. Here's the film. It's amazing how many times when you watch the film you go, oh, let's reach a deal. Let's make a plea agreement. Let's plead guilty. Right. Or, oh, it's not quite what we thought it was.
Right.
Let's take another look at it. And
right.
And so I'm happy about that. So there may be some things where we may be able to dress it up to let the Democrats save a little face. But the truth of the matter is, they got mad and they've done something that is really counterproductive for what they claim their interests are.
Professor Kline, you want to weigh in here?
Well, the main concern that I see as it relates to ICE, John, and I'm sure the congressman is concerned about this as well, is we have never seen in a long, long time such an orchestrated effort to deny engagement and cooperation by local law enforcement in the enforcement of federal law in tense situations in which violence or flight might occur. ICE agents aren't patrolling a junior high school. They are going out and capturing people who illegally entered the country, many with criminal histories, many engaged in criminal activity. And they're having to do it in these sanctuary cities without cooperation. And then when they arrive, you have manufactured outrage that's funded by the left's funding mechanism, all these NGOs and foreign flows of money that come in, where an ICE agent has to try to concentrate on what they're doing, where violence is just an instant away, with somebody blowing a whistle in their ear and profanities coming from all corners, and no local law enforcement engagement or effort, and in fact, in some instances, actual opposition. That's a frightening position. You are setting it up for people to get hurt. And the gross ignorance that we see in the media, that in just a flicker of a second, in hindsight, watching the film, we know what we would do in a dynamic situation. And therefore, we judge within a day or two who's at fault and who's not, is insane. That's not our country. That's not how we work. We are more rational. We are more respective. Mm-hmm. And so that's my concern.
Mm-hmm. We just lost, I think we lost Phill, or we lost me. Todd, are we still there?
I hear you.
Yes,
okay.
You and Griffith still on.
Okay, I saw something.
Yeah.
We lost Phill. So, Morgan, I'm in the Oval Office.
The professor's right. He's absolutely right.
Go ahead.
I mean, as you know, I practiced criminal law for nearly 30 years.
Right.
And, I want to make sure that our officers are accountable, but they have to make split-second decisions. And you talk about the chaos that they're facing with the whistles being blown and all of that. that distracts them. And I'm not saying that in every case they've made the right decisions. I'm just saying it should not be trial by mob, and we have mobs on the street, and then we have mobs on social media that are trying these individuals. And look, they're all human beings. Some of them may have made mistakes in various decisions. I'm not in a position sitting here hundreds of miles away, able to watch a 10-second clip here or a 15-second clip there to make that kind of a decision. That's the kind of a decision that needs to be made in a more rational sense. And we have, unfortunately, the public has decided to resort to trusting in, the social media to make decisions, and that's not a good way to go. It is a volatile situation. You do have cities that are sanctuary cities that are already, the cities themselves are in violation of federal law, and we just have to figure out how to wade through all this stuff. But look, anytime you have a massive law enforcement effort, you're going to have things that go right and things that go wrong. And to make a snap decision on this, the professor was absolutely right. To make a snap decision within an hour or so of who's right and who's wrong, either way, is a mistake, and we have to let these things sort themselves out. But the individuals who are showing up to oppose, to get in the way of law enforcement, it's one thing to stand quietly on the sidewalk holding a sign. That's freedom of speech. It's another to be actively and aggressively impeding law enforcement from being able to do their job, and that's a problem.
Well, that's what Minneapolis has allowed to go on there, and that's why you have these incidents that seem to continue. Certainly, Tom Homan is taking the temperature down, but a couple things I want to comment on. Both Caroline Leavitt yesterday, she came out to the sticks, did a little mini presser, and then when I was with President Trump in the Oval Office yesterday, both of them were very adamant that there was really no change in policy, that they weren't going to cede anything on immigration. Their goal was to still get 20 million of them out of the country. That wasn't going to change. Tactics are going to change. Try to get better at it, like everybody tries to get better at anything. But here's what I want to get your take on. The president said yesterday, if you don't get rid of the filibuster, you're not going to get rid of sanctuary cities. If you don't get rid of sanctuary cities, this stuff is going to continue. And he wants to pass the SAFE Act. I think Chip Rogers reintroduced that in Congress. And he said you can't get that passed without getting rid of the filibuster in the Senate. But you guys passed this act, 220 to 208, in the former Congress. Chip Roy reintroduced it. You got 4 Democrat votes last time. Can you pass it again in the House and send it over to the Senate?
We can pass that or some other election reform bill. There are several out there floating around. We've got Chip Roy's bill. We have Brian Stiles has a bill that I've signed on to as well. I'm not against the Roy bill, voted for it last time. But we'll just see what leadership wants to bring to the floor. But I do believe that we can pass something on election reform. And I have been opposed to the filibuster since arriving here. The modern filibuster rule, it's not the old filibuster rule where you can stand on the floor, allows 2 senators to hold up any bill forever. The old filibuster bill, you had to come to the floor and you had to make your case, and you could stand and talk as long as you wanted to unless they got to 66 votes. But that just shut down an individual talking on the floor. Now you can sit in your office, you make a call to the leader's office, and you put a hold on a bill, and it lasts for 30 days. Then another Senator A does it first, then Senator B. Then after Senator B's 30 days, Senator A can put the hold on again. It goes on indefinitely. It is anathema to the founding principles of this country that was majoritarian rule. The Democrats, when they're in control, will pass all kinds of bad things. But then the American people get to see exactly what they're doing. And right now, if there's a bill that's somewhat controversial, but they have 50 votes and the Democrats are in control, they just bury it with the filibuster. And American people need to know exactly where they stand. You know, I was elected because of cap and trade. I don't think anybody disputes that. Back in 2010. There was a cap and trade version, or the bill went over to the Senate, Mark Warner showed up at the press conference for cap and trade when the Senate introduced their version. We never had to vote on it. Shortly after I was elected 2 years later, he's up on the ballot, and Ed Gillespie comes within 16,000 votes of beating me.
Right.
He never had to take a vote on cap and trade. If he had voted for cap and trade,
Gillespie was.
there were at least 5,000 more votes in Tazewell County alone. And I think in Southwest Virginia alone, we would have found the 16,000, and Mark Warner would no longer be senator. It'd be Senator Ed Gillespie.
Right, but he was able to hide behind
the fact he never took a vote.
Right.
Yeah, he was able to hide. You know, do it the way they wanted, and I've said this before, and it's not exactly the same, but it's pretty darn close. Not only did the original founders not have this modern filibuster rule that didn't come into existence until the 70s, but in the second generation, Calhoun proposed a tyranny of the majority theory, which would say that you need to have more than just a majority in order to get major things done. And the second generation of American leadership said, no, we're a majoritarian government. Right now, a majority in the Senate can't get anything done because you have to have a super majority in order to get the major things done. It's wrong, with a few exceptions like reconciliation, but it's wrong philosophically. Now, the Democrats will do all kinds of crazy things when they get control. No question about it. But then the American people can see where they stand, and I think they'll see how out there they are, and we will get the Senate back fairly quickly after they see what these folks would do if they had control. And we can't do anything when we have control.
I agree with that like 1,000%. And my theory has been, we're going to get to the professor. If you don't pass the filibuster, you're not going to have the majority because you're not doing anything to satisfy our base, which is frustrated that nothing is getting done. And it traces right back to the Senate. And in the Oval Office yesterday, when President Trump gently called out Graham and said, we've got to get this filibuster gone here to get the SAFE Act passed, to get rid of sanctuary cities. And he looked right at Graham. I was standing behind him. He looked right at him and said, isn't that right, Lindsey? And then Graham laughed. Well, don't laugh. Get rid of it because the stakes are high. Professor Kline, weigh in here.
Well, I think the congressman made a very compelling argument, and one aspect of it is the lack of transparency that's caused because of the filibuster, the ability to hide behind procedure and not be directly accountable for a vote, and setting up a system where you don't have to be accountable for the decisions that you make is contrary to how our government should be set up. So I've become a supporter of eliminating the filibuster, and I think he's right, and I think he just gave a very compelling argument for it.
Morgan,
hey, let me tell this because I think the professor will appreciate this. I did the math one time, and if the modern filibuster rule had been in existence in 1860 or 1864, the votes would not have been there to end slavery because the southern states, the slave states, controlled 40% of the Senate. Just saying.
No, you're right. I mean, this thing is so egregious, and all of us that follow this there every day, we understand that your point on Warner was why they have it, so they can hide and not have to reveal what their true colors are or what their true votes are. And you got to let the chips fall where they may. I mean, I think the best argument I've heard on this is the last 5 minutes from Congressman Griffith, Phill, which is that stop hiding. And the reason why both sides want it is so that they don't have to reveal where they stand on stuff, and they can just hide in their office and do nothing. I think that's what the real frustration is here, and it's got to go, because if they don't, I mean, if you don't get this, if you look at Chip's bill, I haven't seen the others. I haven't seen the one that you've signed on to, but Chip's bill is, I mean, it's clear. It's you got to have an ID, and you got to be a legal citizen. I mean, what is wrong with that? Like, if you're not a legal citizen and you can't prove you are, you should be able to vote. Why is anybody not in favor of that?
Are you asking? I can't answer the question, John. I can't tell you. Well, I can tell you. And it's because part of their political base is international. They're being funded. The Democratic Party is being funded by an international cabal moving money into the political party. And I don't know if the congressman has thought about this. Congressman, I'm far out on the political edge on this one, but I would repeal McCain-Feingold, let the money flow back to the party, stop having it flow in this opaque manner with 501c claiming they're not political when they are, and they're engaged on the streets to turn out people for the left. We have to strengthen our parties so that they are more responsible to the people because of the platform they build. They're more responsible to the voter because they help select the candidates that abide within that platform. And then we have accountable elections rather than, the CTCL money, all of that, the Zucker bucks is the tip of the iceberg on how this money is flowing, billions and billions of dollars into NGOs that have captured the Democratic Party and made them socialist and Marxist leaning.
And Congressman, to Phil's point here, we've now getting evidence that I guess there's members of the Communist Party, CCP, that have funded these protests with gods of money. I mean, so we're getting color revolution protests in Minneapolis funded by the Chinese Communist Party, allegedly. What is your reaction to that?
Well, I think that's a serious problem, and I agree with the professor. And what's interesting is that we didn't pay attention to how our system actually is very, very brilliant. We let the states be the test cases, and when it comes to campaign finance reform, we already knew before they passed the federal law that wherever you have that, outside groups suddenly take over. I can remember when I was a state legislator reading articles on a state that had campaign finance so-called reforms, and the candidate woke up one morning, there were ads running that were supposedly for the candidate, totally off message, totally disagreed with them, and yet he had no control because he didn't have the money to counter what the people who were allegedly supporting him were saying. And it's one of the problems that you have when you have these outside groups and you don't know where the money's coming from, being able to put money in. And we've done it some on the Republican side too, but not nearly to the effect that the Democrats have. But I've always believed in full disclosure of every dollar, and don't worry about all these caps and all these restrictions. The people will figure it out. We had that in Virginia when I was in the state legislature, and when, one of the legislators got a bunch of money and then did something he wasn't supposed to do, guess what? The voters took care of it at the next election. When one of the state senators had his son driving him around in a rented, I forget now whether it was a Mercedes-Benz or a BMW, some kind of a fancy car, and was paying his son a big salary, he was gone. The voters will fix this if you just have full disclosure. Open it up, get rid of McCain-Feingold, and let the system work. But you got to have full disclosure.
I want to get to Virginia, Congressman. You brought it up. Court ruling in Tazewell by a judge earlier last week, basically eviscerating. I don't even know what the word is. Judge Jack Hurley put a blowtorch to an atom bomb to the Democrats' ruse to get this to change the districts in Virginia to get to a 10-1 majority and get this redistricting thing on the ballot in April. I mean, he creamed it on 4 issues, said this thing is a 1, 2, 3, 4. He said any of these, if it's violated, I would strike it down. They went 0 for 4. Now the Democrats have appealed this at Virginia Supreme Court. I got Morrissey and Chap Peterson telling me it's going down 7-0, but I've got Democrats like Ben Tribbett saying it's going to pass in the Supreme Court. You're a lawyer. When you read what Hurley said, how could a Supreme Court justice overturn that? It was clear. And it was all about an intervening election.
Yeah, we've got a few extra steps along the way. The way that Judge Hurley did it, it's mixed in the sense that part of it goes to the Court of Appeals, in Virginia, and part of it goes allegedly to the Supreme Court. The Democrats have currently appealed to the Court of Appeals. It hasn't gotten to the Supreme Court yet. If you follow the letter of the law, it should go down. But the courts sometimes don't like to get involved in political discussion, and they may try to figure out a way around it, or they may very well. Sorry, I'm headed to another meeting, but they may very well find some way to dodge. I can't see how, because the intervening election and the fact that the Democrats have admitted that they made a mistake because they didn't put in a bill, even in their intervening election argument, they didn't post the notice that was required by law, so they put in a bill to retroactively eradicate the law that required them to post notice that they were going to put a constitutional amendment before the General Assembly. And so, by introducing that bill to retroactively repeal, they've admitted they didn't do it right.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't see how a court wouldn't say, you messed it up. Nice try again in 2 years.
Right.
And they have the power to do it in 2 years, but we'll see what the courts do. It ought to be a 7-0, but I never count on anything until I see it coming out of the court system.
I don't know. You read Hurley's argument. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a layman, but I read it and it's like, wow, this is like, I don't know how an appeals court overturns this. I think they'll just, do what this guy Hurley said. And, if they appeal it to the Supreme Court of Virginia, I get the argument that, well, these guys and gals are nervous because they're appointed by basically now the majority, and they're afraid they won't get reappointed if they vote no. But then you're not a judge. Then you're just a political operative. So, if you're appointed a judge, your wife's a judge, right? It doesn't matter who appointed her. She's going to rule as a judge should rule. Not, well, if I don't rule this way, I'll not get reappointed because now the Democrats are in control of some committee, right? What judge would do that? Then you're not a judge.
Well, there's some, and this is where I think on the direct issue, you're right. I think they're all good people and they will make the right decision. However, there's a lot of procedural pitfalls and only things that only a lawyer can love. And I don't want to go into them because I don't want to give any ammunition to the other side.
Right.
But there are some procedural issues that the Democrats could theoretically raise. Hurley is philosophically absolutely 100% correct on the law.
Mm-hmm.
But procedurally, there could be some issues, and we'll have to see how the courts rule on those. And courts, and this is just typical of all courts, they like to dodge political issues if they can. So if they can find some kind of a procedural way to dodge, they might do it. And we'll just have to wait and see. I'm going to have to run.
Okay.
It's been great being with you, and like I say, it's always good to listen to Professor Kline.
Congressman, thanks for being with us. You want to follow Congressman Morgan Griffith, griffith.hus.gov, griffith.hus.gov. Thank you, Morgan, for being with us.
Thank you.
Phill, I've got a minute. Go ahead and wrap us up, Phill.
Well, I think the congressman was accurate as it relates to the court. Courts are reticent in what they consider to be political questions, and they should be. It's the legislative process that decides some of those. You see them pulling back as it relates to redistricting for political purposes, as long as it doesn't harm those populations that are of concern to the court, minorities and women and so forth. And that makes more sense for the court to get engaged. And the congressman is also right in that if they don't get engaged, there's political ways in which they can look at a procedure and find a procedure frailty that allows them to punt the issue down the road. So, but Hurley is correct, and it's a real simple decision. The Virginia legislature made rules as it relates to these types of amendments, and what he said is you've got to follow the rules that you passed. You can't decide that it's inconvenient because now you have power and you want to change something contrary to those rules. So I think the decision will be upheld.
Yeah, I do too. I did. Just when you read Hurley's ruling in Virginia, he just annihilated this thing on every count. And I think Morgan Griffith then nailed it when he said they've admitted they didn't follow the law, and now they're trying to rescind the law that they're supposed to follow. The whole thing doesn't make sense. It'll get enacted for 2028. I don't think it passes in 26. Phill Kline, you're the man. Thanks for being with us. As always, Phill, we got to have you back. I know you want to do more on our show. So next week, I got a lot of time. I'll be in Iowa. You can call me then. By the way, Ox joining us in Iowa. I just found that out. Got Saxman, got Ox, got Iowa, got Larry. It's going to be fun. Phill, thanks for being with us. People follow you. Where do they go?
Thank you.
All right.
Hashtag Phill Decline.
Hashtag Phill Decline. Coming up next, Congressman Jimmy Patronis. Don't want to miss this. I'll be right back.